Welcome back. We're joined by Bill Gertz, a man we have the privilege of speaking with each week. He hails from the Washington Free Beacon, where he is a senior editor, and also, of course, the prize-winning column he writes for the Washington Times, Inside the Ring. Bill Gertz, welcome inside our ring. Good to have you with us.
Hi, Frank. Good to be on the program.
I don't even know where to begin, Bill. You've been covering so many really important stories this week, and there's so much going on. But maybe the place to start is the theme that we've been focusing on really for, it seems, months now. But of late, we've now got much, much more reason to be concerned about the Obama bomb deal, as I call it. What do you make of what is in it and what is not in it? And what are you hearing from your sources about their concerns in government?
Well, this Iran deal, as you're aware, is really shaping up to be a national security disaster for the United States. Basically, I did a piece a news analysis of the accord, and it's really deficient in leaving out key facilities. For example, there's no reference to the Parchin military facility, which is where the Iranians conducted explosive tests to make a nuclear bomb, which is the central issue of this whole agreement. The rest of it covers uranium enrichment facilities, which Iran has deceptively claimed were for nuclear generating electrical power. Also, the Bushehr reactor, built by Russia along the coast of the Persian Gulf, is not included. And analysts say that could produce plutonium for scores of bombs a year, and yet it was not even covered by the agreement. So there are a lot of deficiencies. Again, the verification procedures are really problematic. They're not unprecedented, like the administration says. They get a delay of 24 days, and there's no U.S. inspectors allowed to be on the International Atomic Energy Agency inspection team. This was a major concession to the Iranians.
It really sounds like a formula for a sort of complete Potemkin verification scheme, where we cannot have confidence that actually we know what they're doing in places where they're likely to be doing it. But Bill, doesn't this concern people in the Pentagon, that we're watching what appears to be an enriching of a nation that is capable of all kinds of malevolence in a very strategically important part of the world, and is possibly not only going to have immense amounts of money with which to scale all that up, but also access to a whole host of weapons that, besides the nuclear ones, will be posing threats to our ships and shipping and other interests and allies in the region?
Well, I haven't heard anything from the Pentagon about the deal. What I have heard is that the Pentagon, as you know, is scrambling to try to deal with the crisis of funding. And I think this may have been part of the president's strategy, strip the Pentagon of all of its funding. We're now facing, more than $800 billion in cuts at the Pentagon, and they're just scrambling to try and find ways to do their basic requirement.
With fewer and fewer forces as well as resources. Of course, since we last talked, Bill, I think we've had an announcement of another 40,000 reduction in the U.S. Army's, active duty forces. We're watching readiness plummet, as you know so well. We're watching any kind of modernization programs stretched out or canceled outright. It really is a formula in a much more dangerous world for a security disaster for us, don't you think?
Absolutely. The worst part of this deal is that it's giving the Iranian Islamic Republic huge legitimacy that it didn't have in the past. And of course, that's going to really fire up its forces in places like Syria, in places like other parts of the Middle East. We see them in Yemen. So this is really a formula for disaster. We can only hope that the Congress will take action to really try to derail this deal.
Yeah. Well, we're certainly hard at work on that very proposition, but I must say it is going to be made more difficult by what we're learning is the administration's plan to get a vote in the UN Security Council as early as 9 o'clock on Monday, according to Ambassador John Bolton, without much debate, to say the least, and it will further, compound the dangers that we're facing from this deal. Bill, let me turn to a couple of other things that you've been covering this week and Inside the Ring at the Washington Times and at your Free Beacon outlet as well. Most immediately on China, we've had overflights of U.S. B-52s in the Pacific to try to demonstrate our power projection capabilities there. I'd be interested in your thoughts on how the Chinese are likely to perceive those ephemeral things rather than the permanent efforts they're making to establish their presence and control over the South China Sea with man-made islands, and also the latest on the OPM attack, who was involved in that and how they did it.
Yeah, first, on the bomber mission, the two B-52 bombers from Barksdale Air Force Base conducted a 44-hour nonstop flight to Australia and back. They didn't even land. But this was a demonstration of U.S. regional capabilities. They were part of some Australian exercises, and they were conducted significantly very close to the South China Sea, where recent tensions have risen over China's reclamation of islands and the militarization of those islands, which have rattled the neighbors from Vietnam to Japan. So this was a good step. That they call it a BAD, which is B-A-A-D, Bomber Assurance and Deterrence Mission, and it was meant clearly as a signal to China. Whether China gets that signal or not is hard to say. Now, if we had sent maybe a dozen bombers over there, I think they would have got a different message. On the OPM hack, this is a very significant story that I broke today in the Washington Free Beacon on how security researchers have finally tracked down two Chinese government-run hacking groups. One is called Deep Panda, the other is called WECB. They're using U.S. computer service companies in Los Angeles, Nevada, and elsewhere, Denver, to conduct cyber attacks. This is the increasing sophistication of these cyber attacks is to, again, use domestic infrastructure as a way to try and thwart U.S. intelligence agencies from identifying the source of the attack. So it's really significant in that I was able to, for the first time, identify how the Chinese are conducting some of these massive bulk personal data collection cyber attacks.
And Bill, just remind us what seems to be the focus of these personal information data raids and their implications, again, from a security perspective.
It's part of a major spying operation by the Chinese military, and the two PLA in particular. They've been vacuuming up millions and millions of records on Americans. And we saw that in the Office of Personnel Management hack, 22.1 records on people who hold security clearances. A large percentage of them were vacuumed up. In addition, last year in February, they attacked the Anthem healthcare provider and stole 80 million records, including many government officials. So it's clearly they're using big data for both future cyber attacks as well as traditional espionage and intelligence gathering.
Bill, two other stories that caught my attention, and we don't have time to do justice probably to either one of them, but I do want to salute you for your reporting. Parallels that you've drawn between the deal we just talked about with Iran and that preceded it with North Korea to dismal effect. And the other parallels between Hillary Clinton's emails and the security breaches that they represented and the former director of Central Intelligence, John Deutsch, experience.
Well, real quickly, on the John Deutsch affair, it's very similar to the discovery that Hillary Clinton was using classified information on her home server is very similar to a case back in the 90s where the CIA director was found to have put incredibly large amounts of highly sensitive intelligence information on his home computer network, and he was actually investigated and charged for it criminally and was pardoned by President Clinton. And now you have a case where Hillary Clinton has done the same thing, and there seems to be no interest in conducting an investigation of this very serious security breach.
It's truly a travesty, and I trust that in the remaining months before elections are going to determine whether Hillary Clinton is not just the Democratic nominee, but also President of the United States, others, including your good self, will be drilling down on this issue because I really think it represents national security malpractice and should be considered a disqualifier. Bill, we'll talk about North Korea and Iran on other occasions, I know, in the future. Thank you very much for joining us today and for the terrific work you do at the Washington Times and the Washington Free Beacon. We'll talk with you again next week about those and more. Next up, Ilya Feoktistov, one of the preeminent researchers on jihad in America, talks about the attack in Chattanooga yesterday. That and more straight ahead.